So what about so you're saying meat is kind of the main category you're saying, or one of the top foods categories. What about all the different people coming out in the last 5-10 years talking about vegetarianism and veganism and the benefits of that, eliminating meat? Because I see different sides.
Yeah.
I see people saying the lion diet only, it's like all meat, and how they've gotten rid of certain diseases and skin conditions. And I see other people are vegetarian and vegan who eliminate things, but also people that go that far extreme and have more issues. So, what are your thoughts on that perspective?
I think people find the arguments that they want to find, right? So a lot of this is philosophical and ethical. So I was a vegetarian for 7 years.
Really?
Back in the late 90s. And I read a book, and it was very convincing, and one of the arguments was that, there were lots of them, but one of them that I've later sort of had a different perspective was that look at World War II. There was no meat around, and people had way less heart disease, and they had way less problems, and they lost weight. Well, they didn't have much of anything. They didn't have any sugar, they didn't have any white flour, they didn't have any processed food. So you can't, and that's the argument that is made erroneously so often. They pick something that's not a causative factor, but just a correlation.
채소와 과일 속에 다양한 영양소들이 건강에 주는 긍정적인 효과도 분명 있을 수 있습니다. 하지만 제가 정말 말리고 싶은 건 모든 음식은 배제하고 오로지 과일과 채소만 먹는 엄격한 비건 식이요법입니다. 그런 식단은 장기적인 건강을 절대로 보장하지 못합니다. 물론 일시적으로 영양소 결핍으로 인한 부작용보다는 살이 빠지고 건강이 개선되는 효과를 먼저 느낄 수 있을 것입니다. 하지만 그것은 해로운 음식을 제한하고 섭취 칼로리를 줄여서 생긴 효과이지 과일의 살아있는 효소와 채소의 식이섬유 때문이 아닙니다. 7년간 엄격한 채식을 해본 경험이 있는 에크버그 박사의 이야기를 더 들어보겠습니다.
So, vegans versus carnivore. I believe that plant food can have some cleansing properties, right? So if you have cancer, for example, and you have a toxic liver, that it's a fatty liver, it's an overwhelmed liver, it's just congested and toxic in so many different ways. I think that you should go vegan. Right? I think you should try that for 3 months, 6 months, maybe 12 months until you can reevaluate, because I think there's some powerful cleansing properties. But animal products are more rebuilding. Right? So what are we looking to get from food? We're looking to get fuel to turn into energy. We're looking for building blocks to become tissue, because your body constantly breaks down and you have to rebuild it, right? So you need what I call genuine replacement parts.
Sure.
Okay? And if you're going to build a house and you tree falls on your house and the brick wall is damaged, you don't rebuild that with foam. Right? You need the right stuff. And we are built from the foods that the planet produces. So we need genuine replacement parts. And then we also need vitamins and minerals. Those are the catalysts that help us convert the fuel and the building block into energy and tissue. Right? And we get way more of that from animal foods. Right? They have a higher food value, much more of the genuine replacement parts. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because you are meat, right? Your body is, your tissue is primarily meat. And if you eat something that's close to your tissue, it's going to be less of a transition for your body to turn that into your tissue. So yes, your body can turn vegetables and plants into protein and body parts, but it doesn't happen nearly at the same percentage of conversion or absorption.
I mean, you were an elite world athlete, champion in the decathlon, arguably the hardest sporting event there is in the world. You ate meat during that time, I'm assuming, and then after your career, you went vegetarian for 6-7 years, you said, and now you're back on meat. So. Yes. I'm assuming you've studied and seen all the documentaries about veganism and these elite athletes that turn into vegan athletes, and they have this superpower, and then other people that are meat eaters. and you've done it yourself as
Yeah.
an elite athlete, as a doctor and a nutritionist. So what did you notice when you became vegan for 7 years or vegetarian and then now back on meat after that?
I did fairly well on it. The biggest challenge for me was that when you don't eat meat, then you tend to be more limited. So if you're out somewhere traveling, now you're eating a lot of bean burritos and French fries instead of real food.
Carbs and yeah.
Correct. But I don't know that I really suffered. But what happens with a lot of people is that it might take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years before they really become deficient in something, before they become anemic, before they're missing vitamin D and B12, because you have reserves of most of those. And in my case, I wish I'd known half of the stuff that I know now, because I was not an educated athlete.
Right. Well, back in the 80s, they weren't really
Back
teaching
in the
this
80s,
stuff,
you were taught to eat carbs.
Eat your Wheaties.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Eat your Wheaties, eat your carbs for breakfast.
I kid you not, I probably ate more than 1,000 grams of carbs per day.
Oh my gosh.
On average. I mean, I was working out 4, 5, 6 hours a day, eating 5, 6, 7,000 calories, and you burn it all off. So you think that, hey, there's no problem here.
When you stop working out, you keep eating that way. That's what happened to me. It's like, getting the...
Yeah, I never really gained the weight. I mean, I gained some.
Yeah.
I got a little fatter than I was because I didn't maintain 3% body fat exactly. But I didn't really learn about food until much later when I was in chiropractic school and started putting it together.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you may not see the deficiencies in the first number of years, but what I'm hearing you say is you're probably eventually going to be more deficient.
Yes.
It's just going to be harder.
And what you see as a clinician is that there is no black and white.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking for, well, just tell me what to do. Well, you can't do that. You have to understand where you are on the scale. And for some people, I'm sure there are super strong weightlifters who are vegans because their body can tolerate it, at least for many years. But then you have all these people who have been vegetarian or vegans for 10 years, and they start having all these issues, especially thin females who might have stress issues and digestive problems and so forth.
키토 다이어트를 3년째 실천 중인 저는 식단에 큰 비중을 차지하지는 않지만 채소와 과일을 즐겨 먹습니다. 하지만 위에서 말씀드렸듯이 과일과 채소를 주식으로 삼기에는 필수 영양소가 부족한 것이 사실입니다. 그리고 에크버그 박사가 언급하지 않은 또 한 가지 사실을 추가로 말씀드리고 싶은데요. 바로 항영양소에 관한 것입니다. 채소에는 영양소도 들어있지만 그것의 흡수를 방해하는 항영양소도 존재합니다. 이는 포식자로부터 도망갈 수 없는 식물이 자신을 보호하기 위해 진화한 방어기제의 일종입니다. 대표적인 항영양소는 피트산, 옥살산, 렉틴, 탄닌, 글루코시놀레이트 등이 있습니다. 이런 항영양소는 음식의 조리 과정에서 상당 부분 줄일 수 있지만 100% 제거되지는 않습니다. 그리고 이것은 한 연구에서 굴과 검은콩, 그리고 옥수수 또르띠아를 섭취했을 때 아연의 흡수율을 비교한 표인데요. 굴만 먹었을 때는 혈청 아연의 수치가 빠르게 상승하지만 콩과 굴을 함께 먹었을 때는 그 흡수율이 3분의 1 수준으로 떨어졌고 옥수수 또르띠아와 함께 먹었을 때는 아연의 흡수가 거의 완벽하게 차단됐습니다. 연구에서는 이것이 콩과 옥수수에 함유된 피트산 때문인 것으로 추정했습니다. 저는 음식의 한 가지 측면만을 부풀려 공포심을 조장하고 싶지는 않습니다. 콩과 옥수수에는 반대로 건강에 좋은 여러 가지 영양소도 함유하고 있는 것이 사실입니다. 하지만 제가 말씀드린 내용 역시 과장이 없는 연구 결과이며 팩트입니다. 제가 이 예시를 보여드린 이유는 채소과일식을 주장하는 사람들로 인해 그 음식들의 위험성은 묻히고 효능과 효과만 너무 과대평가되어 있다고 생각하기 때문입니다. 여러 정보를 균형적으로 취하지 않고 특정 음식의 단편적인 면만 본다면 어떤 음식도 슈퍼푸드가 될 수 있고 반대로 독극물처럼 악마화될 수도 있습니다.
So on the other, so yes, top 10 foods would be like the ones we talked about. But then in addition to that, which is really hard for people to understand and which we test a lot in the offices, the number one food to avoid for you is the one that you react to. Right? Because that creates
different for everyone.
That creates inflammation, that wreaks havoc it doesn't matter how healthy that food is for someone else, but if you can't tolerate it, if you have a reaction, a hypersensitivity reaction, that's the absolute worst food for you. Brings us to the carnivores. And I think meat is a great foundation. And this is just like a personal feeling. I don't think that carnivore is optimal forever for most people. It might very well work, but I think for most people, I think a good variety is probably better.
You mean only carnivore? Only
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But the people who get results from carnivore, the reason it's such a huge movement and it undeniably produces results is that if you eat something you're sensitive to, you get inflammation. Then those are the worst foods for you. And some people are so sensitive that they react to everything except meat.
Right.
Right? So it's the ultimate elimination diet. So now you've eliminated, like if you go paleo, you're going to eliminate dairy and processed foods and sugar and grain because our ancestors didn't have any of that. But if you're super sensitive, you might still react to lettuce and bell pepper and all of these things. So the people who get the tremendous life-changing results on carnivore, they're the ones who only tolerate meat, right? That's the ultimate elimination. So now, for someone, it might be that they ate meat and lettuce, and it still didn't work. And when they cut out the lettuce, then they got the results.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that carnivore is the best for everybody. I think anyone who has some issues that haven't been resolved and they have some autoimmunity, they have digestive issues and brain fog, I think they should try carnivore and see if it changes something.
Right.
But again, then we go and we turn these things into religions and we say, it worked for me, so you should do it too.
Yeah. This is the answer for everyone.
이 영상도 그렇지만 저희 채널에서는 주로 저탄수화물 식단에 대해 다루고 있습니다. 저 역시도 3년째 키토 식단을 실천 중이고 좋은 효과를 보았습니다. 하지만 저는 이 방식이 모든 사람에게 최선의 선택이라고 주장하는 것은 아닙니다. 저탄고지 식단에 대한 개념조차 없던 시절에도 많은 사람들이 건강하게 잘 살아왔으니까요. 하지만 건강에 이르는 길에는 여러 가지 경로가 있으며 저탄수화물 식단도 그중 하나입니다. 우리나라에 이 식이요법이 소개된 건 불과 10년 남짓이지만 세계적으로는 그 효과와 안전성에 대한 데이터가 충분히 축적되어 있습니다. 그리고 단지 연구뿐만이 아니라 이 식단을 실천하고 체중 감량, 혈당 조절, 염증 개선 등 그 효과를 체험한 사람들의 다양한 사례들이 소개되고 있는데요. 물론 한 개인의 개별적인 사례가 이 식단의 효과와 안전을 보장하지는 못합니다. 하지만 그것이 수천, 수만 건이라면 우리는 그것을 더 이상 무시할 수 없습니다.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So what are some other meats that you recommend that we should be eating? Foods that you recommend we should be eating, yeah.
I think then the next best would be tubers, like roots, sweet potato, rutabaga, parsnip, turnips, etc. Because they're generally fairly low carb.
Sweet potatoes are?
Sweet potatoes are a little bit higher in carbs. They're way less than grains. But a lot of these, like the rutabaga and so forth, they're fairly low carb.
Sure, gotcha.
And they're also gluten-free, and they pretty much fit into any regimen. So if you're on an autoimmune diet, if you're on a lectin-free diet, if you're avoiding nightshades, the tubers are still safe.
What are the top tubers? Sweet potatoes?
Sweet potatoes, rutabaga, turnips, parsnips. What's the other one? The celery root.
Okay.
So those are generally pretty good. And again, the sweet potato is generally more safe than the potato because the potato is a nightshade. So if you, again, have those sensitivities and you're avoiding nightshades, then potato has to go as well.
Okay, so we got the tubers. What's the next category you really like?
So then, assuming that you're not sensitive to nightshades, then I would go with all of the non-starchy vegetables. So now we got eggplants and bell peppers that I think for most people are good foods, but again, they have some lectins. Then I think the broccoli and cauliflower are like staples in my house for sure. That you
those
can,
are low. Those are like very low calorie,
yes,
nutrient dense, but also low carb too, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
broccoli, cauliflower, they're like 4 or 5% net carbs, so it's very, very low.
Yeah.
And of course, avocado, which is really a fruit by definition, but it has quite a bit of fat and very, very low carbs. It's like 2-3%
Really?
net carbs.
Okay. And what's the deal with the nightshades? Because I know there's a big, conversation about that right now, where these foods actually are hurting you. These nightshades, or it depends on your sensitivity levels.
Correct.
Right?
They're hurting some people.
Plant paradise, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So, I don't know what the percentage would be, but I think gluten hurts everyone, right? But I don't think lectins hurt everyone. Not at those doses. Again, it's all about
Smaller doses.
dosage. So nightshades have lectins, and if you are sensitive to something, if you have inflammation, if you have some issues, then I think it's sort of like the carnivore. Carnivore is more extreme, but before that, you want to try cutting out the lectins, cutting out the nightshades.
Okay.
But again, it's not. Some people sort of pick their little niche and say, I'm gonna be the lectin guy, I'm gonna be the nightshade guy, and they promote that as the solution for everyone, but it's not.
Got it.
And low carb is not the solution for everyone. I have some skinny patients that need to eat carbs.
Yeah.
Right? They don't need to eat sugar and white bread, but they would probably do better eating 70, 80, 100 grams of carbs. Because they're very, very insulin sensitive. Their body has trouble putting on some weight.
Right. Are there any other categories you think we should be eating?
The leafy greens are kind of in the non-starchy vegetables, but they're sort of a little subcategory. And then I think some people kind of count the eggs with the meat, but I think it's a separate category because very few people are sensitive to meat. A lot of people are sensitive to eggs.
People are sensitive to eggs. Okay.
Yes. And again, it's not a majority. It's not like with wheat or pasteurized milk, but I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20%. And it's hard to tell because the people that come to my clinic, they're the ones who have the problems. So they're probably way more sensitive than the general population.
Sure. Are you a big fan of eggs yourself
Yes.
as a food group?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think quality is huge. I think a lot of problems develop because people eat really, really poor quality. So I think if the chicken or the hen had a healthy life and produces a healthy egg, I think you're much less likely to ever develop a sensitivity. But if that chicken is eating chemicals and hormones and was raised under horrendous conditions, I think your body is much more likely to develop a sensitivity to that because of whatever might be in there.
Right. Any other final category you like as a food group? The most nutrient-dense foods.
Yeah, I do think even though dairy is a very common allergen, I do think a lot of people do well with some forms of dairy. So I typically recommend yogurt and sour cream because it's very rewarding. If you're doing a low-carb diet, then adding a little sour cream to something is super tasty. I think cheese is okay for a lot of people, especially if it's like a good quality cheese, not the melty singles and all that. But
not the nacho cheese dip at the movie theater, which tastes so good, but it's not that good for you.
Yeah, I don't even know about that.
It's not even cheese, right?
Yeah, I think I've trained myself into just associating chemicals with that stuff.
I know.
But yeah, I try to get things as close to nature as possible. So if I have the option, I'm going to get pasture-raised eggs. I'm going to get raw cheese with as few additives as possible. Because nature made things for us. We are nature, right? And all the other animals on the planet, they graze off the planet. They don't process things. They don't alter things. So as soon as we change it, we increase the likelihood of screwing it up. And the more we change it, the more we screw it up. So the closer we can get to the source, the better.
Yeah.
저는 좋은 품질의 음식을 먹는 것이 중요하다는 말에는 충분히 동의합니다. 하지만 이는 여러 선택지가 있을 때 가능한 이야기입니다. 안전하고 품질이 좋은 음식은 그만큼 가격이 비싸기 마련입니다. 예를 들어 공장식 케이지에서 길러진 닭이 낳은 계란보다 무항생제, 자연방사 계란이 훨씬 비쌉니다. 또한 현대적인 농법으로 재배한 채소보다 친환경 유기농 채소가 건강에 더 좋고 안전하겠지만 그만큼 가격이 높습니다. 하지만 저는 좋은 품질의 음식을 먹어야 한다는 규칙 때문에 발생하는 비용 차이가 특정 식이요법을 시도하지 못하게 만드는 장벽이 되어서는 안 된다고 생각합니다. 예를 들어 드넓은 초원에서 자란 소가 좁은 사육장에서 길러진 소보다 훨씬 건강한 것은 부정할 수 없습니다. 하지만 그런 소고기는 훨씬 비쌉니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 우리는 여전히 저렴한 식재료로도 키토제닉 식단을 시도할 수 있습니다. 친환경 유기농 채소를 살 여력이 없다면 최선의 선택은 아니지만 여전히 다른 옵션들이 있습니다. 예를 들어 지역 시장에서 저렴하고 신선한 야채를 구입하고 세척 방법이나 조리법을 잘 활용하면 그 야채가 가진 위험성을 최소화할 수 있습니다. 저는 음식의 품질이 중요하지 않다고 말하는 것이 아닙니다. 다만 저렴한 식재료로도 건강한 식단을 충분히 시도할 수 있다는 점을 강조하고 싶습니다. 따라서 저는 식단을 실천함에 있어 음식의 종류와 비율이 최우선이고 두 번째가 품질이라고 생각합니다. 메인으로 가져갈 음식 종류를 선택하고 그 다음 품질은 각자의 여건에 맞게 선택하면 됩니다.
What would be 3 foods that you would recommend everyone eliminate? If you could eliminate or have very, very little every once in a while, but if you could almost eliminate these 3 foods from your diet, it would help you in a big way.
But obviously sugar. Sugar